Today what we're going to do is start with another dot, just like we have in past drawings if you've been with me before, but in this case we're not going to start a border that goes all the way around. It's the beginning of something I think you'll have fun drawing over and over again with a little practice. It starts with that dot, and we're going to spiral it around here and then come down along the side edge. I'm going to move it in a little bit like that, and let's stop here and add a little more line there and curve around like this at the bottom. So it looks almost like a vine twisting. I'm going to add a little notch here like that. And then from the top, I'll draw a line that comes over, comes down about like that, and up and over. There's that little break. It's going to curve just like the one on this side here. But I'm going to bring it around to right about there. If you look at this curve and draw a line that looks kind of like it, you end up seeing that this area here looks kind of like an old scroll, like on a pirate treasure map. To make it look even more so, we'll come over here, not right at the end, but come in about that far and draw a line that comes down. It's going to move kind of like this one, but not exactly. It leaves some breaks in it, not necessarily at the same place. It's going to come down in here. And then we just connect these two with another line that has a break at the bottom there. Those little breaks give us a chance to make it look old and frayed and tattered, just like we've done on past borders that go around the whole picture. I'm going to draw this one coming over and then coming up and around, so it looks like it kind of is torn into the paper there. And we'll pretend this is an old piece of parchment, an old treasure map, or maybe an old document. Now notice I add a little line here, a line from the end there, and then one here. So you're actually looking into this scroll as it turns up inside itself. Do the same thing up here. This is kind of a fun trick. You're copying this line here, like that, and then you're copying this line here, down here, like that. And sometimes if you have this a little longer, you can even add another little curve in there, so it looks like it's really swirling in upon itself, like a real treasure map. To make it look more round, we'll come down here at the bottom, and I'd like you to draw some quick little curvy lines like these, just copying this curve, and it's going to come across, and notice I've left a little space underneath it so that you have that little shimmer of light. And we put a shadow underneath like this, and I'm just going to lighten it up over here. And then, oh, here's this one here too where it curves. I got to curve around like that. Do the same thing up here on this bottom of the scroll where it tucks underneath. And this gives us an idea that the light source in our drawing is coming from up above, casting a shadow along the lower part here. That means where we have this opening in here, you have a dark area inside like that. And you can curve this around and maybe add a little detail here. See how it makes that stick out more there? And same thing in here, just a little bit in here. You don't want to lose all that detail. And then in here, maybe a few little marks to show where it tucks in a little bit along the edge. A little bit in here. See how it curves over, it tucks in. It's going to get some shadow there. Notice these little marks make it look more interesting, make it look more three-dimensional. That's what we're looking for here, something to make it look like a real treasure map, something that could guide us on a journey. In this case, we might use it as a scroll, a place where you could write a title for the picture, or maybe even a story to go with it. Instead of drawing the wiggly border drawing that I usually do, I'm going to just draw a line that comes down here. You can break it up a little bit, but I'm not going to spend so much time wiggling on it. We've got a lot of work to do in the center of this, a lot of other details to add. So I'm just going to move this around here like this. I'm going to come in, let me bring this up here. And I'm going to bring this one in like this, right across like that. So we have a border framing in our future masterpiece. I think I'll leave that right out up there. And then do the same thing down here. Just tear it away a little bit. We want to make it look old, like it's going to take us way back in time. We're going back to the days of kings and castles and queens and dragons and sea monsters. And we're going to have an adventure inside this picture frame. It's going to start out with a shape right about here. It comes up like a big smile curve. This will be the beginning of our main character of our story. If you draw a line that comes down below here and another one here like that, you see it looks kind of like a boat, or maybe like a banana, maybe like a piece of lemon or a slice of apple. To make it look more like a boat, I'm going to draw some splashes here and a wave rolling up there. And I'm going to carry this one right off towards the after end or the back end of the boat here. Kind of hard to tell which is which, so we'll just let that flow as though the boat is moving that way, and there's what's called the wake trailing behind it. This boat has a railing that comes along here. It's called the strake, and it comes along like this, and a gunnel there. And we'll put another one underneath it like this. So we're just copying lines we've already drawn. You draw the first one across the top, and then you draw these two. And try to keep the spaces kind of even between them, but don't worry about it being a little off. Everybody built their boat differently back then, and constantly trying to improve it. To make this boat look more elegant and a little bit more large and powerful, we'll draw a line that comes up here at the front or the bow of the boat. And we'll draw another one that comes up here at what's called the stern of the boat, and just kind of draw a little line across here. A long time ago, most boats were built like this. They had a stem post and a stern post, and these were often used to throw the ropes or the lines across and tie them snugly to the docks. But in time, or on larger ships, they would add another stick here like that, and maybe one over here. Now I'm getting fancy curving them up like this. I don't usually do that, but it seemed like a good idea, so I thought I'd try it. And then I'm going to connect these with a line that comes up like that, and it's going to stick out to the front of the boat, out to the bow end here, the stem. And I'm going to draw a little platform here. Long time ago, the English king had a hard time fending off the Viking raiders that were pillaging his coast, and ships were designed with these low flat decks like that, and found that you could add a platform up on top, and that he could add a wall up here with two lines. Notice this one's shorter and this one's longer or higher. And then if you add dashes like these connecting those two lines, and then draw a line coming down, over, and up in each one, it made it look like the walls of the castles that were made out of stone. And now he had ships with castle walls that would protect his archers, his soldiers, and it made it look a whole lot fancier too. On the after end, or the back end of the boat, the walls might be a little higher. And back here, I'm going to come at a different angle here. I'm going to draw those same notches here. They have fancy names for these things. These are called crenellations, and they have a high part here to protect the archers, and a low part here that they could fire their arrows through. Come across like that. This wall is a little higher. More important people were back here: the king and his men, his advisors, and his captain and all. And up in here, they would have their shields arranged along the back end. So draw a whole bunch of little shield shapes, little curvy lines coming to a point at the bottom, and a line going across. And each one of these might have a different design or a different color in it, a different pattern. They're so small on our drawing, you could just scribble something in there, just wiggle it and pretend it's a castle or a dragon or a cross or whatever you want to have on your shield. And then up here, we'll use a different design. We'll just draw some lines like these to make our boat look fancier. We'll call this the king's ship. And if a fleet of ships was sailing along, they would have distinguished patterns and colors that would make it easy to tell which boat was which and whose was whose, certainly to be able to tell the king's ship. I'm going to draw a fancy line coming down here to add some support to that part that sticks way out on the front or the bow. I'll draw a little line right there. This is called the stem. And back here we have the stern, and these are called knees, and they offer some support and make the boat look fancier. In time, this will have figureheads and carvings of maidens or later on presidents and other things. But back in this day, I might just have a pattern carved into it. Right here, there's a pole that comes down. This is called, it's going to be connecting the steerboard here. It's the helm, and have a person here. We'll draw these people a little bigger than they really are, like they often did back in the old paintings and tapestries of this time period. They would make the people look much larger in proportion to the boat sometimes to give them a little more importance. Draw a bunch of little shapes down here and imagine these people underneath this shelter of that upper deck there, and over here you can draw some people standing in here as well. And they could be working and doing other things, and just kind of makes it look like there's a lot of people on there. If you want to think of this as a pleasure cruise, you can think of this as your mom and your dad, or maybe it's all your best friends and you're going out for a ride on the king's ship, and have some more people up here too, just to make it look like you've got lots of friends on this journey with you. This boat has no sail on it yet, and if it didn't have a sail at all, they had these little holes that were pierced through the side of the boat, and they could take oars with long handles like this. By the way, this comes down to the steerboard, which is right here. The steerboard is on the right-hand side. On sailor talk, that's the starboard or the right side of the boat. And on the left side, it's called the port side, and that's the side that would tie up to the dock because this board here would be in the way otherwise. And if you come down here with lines like these, it puts a dark color or a dark tone at the bottom. I'm going to make them come straight down, but I'm going to spread them apart in the middle here a little bit to make it look wider. And then I'm going to close them up a little more as I come up to the front or the bow to make it look a little bit more curved. I'm going to make that a little, change the shape a little there. And if you want to bring a couple lines in here like that, it looks kind of like the planks on the boat. And then put a shadow underneath these decks here up above. Just darken that in a little bit, darken this in a little bit here, and back in here to make it look like these platforms overlap the sides. In fact, they stick out to the sides a bit. And then you can put shadows on these guys here too. Just a little darkness to make them look more shaded and a little more three-dimensional, a little bit more round. You can do this up here, but you don't have to do them quite as dark because they're not in the shadow. They've got sunlight coming down on them. And now in this area here, if you want to make these stripes look like your team colors, your school colors, you can think of a darker color, a lighter color. It could be red and white, or it could be green and yellow. It could be whatever color combination you want there. But those little extra details really help make it look a little bit more interesting. On this boat, we have a sail, and this sail is going to start here. It's going to come up and over like this. It's angled a little bit. It's an arc, like a rainbow coming up and over. On the forward end or the front end, the sail bulges out. It fills with air and it pushes out to the front. It's catching the wind that's blowing this boat through the water. On the after end, we copy that same shape and draw it coming over like this. It's pushing out. It's bigger on this end. I'm going to bring it down here like this. I'm going to even overlap here a little bit and then lift it up and over like that. So the wind is lifting the sail as it fills with the wind, and that helps push this boat through the water. We have to have something holding this up, so I'm going to put a mast coming up here like this, and it's going to come up. I'm going to make it a little more angled down like that and come down here like this. And that gives us this long pole that they can raise this yard arm, it's called. So you have the mast here and the yard arm. There's a ring here, goes around the mast. And you have ropes on boats, they call them lines, that come down like this, and these are the lifts that hold that yardarm in place. At the top here, I'm going to put a little crown-like shape. So it looks kind of like the king's crown. It'll make it stand out more full. And so it's certainly the king's ship. And now right here, I'd like you to draw a long, wiggly line like that. The king wants everyone to know that this is his ship. So he's going to fly his flag here. And to fly the flag and make it look like a flag instead of a long, wiggly line, I'm going to come up here like this, start at the tip, and weave a line back and forth. And as I get closer and closer to the mast, I'm going to widen it out. See how it's wider here than it is out there? If I draw a little curve like this, it makes it look like it's really fluttering in the wind. It makes it look pretty special. I'm going to draw another one here just to make it look even more kingly. And another one here that's going to come off in this direction and kind of overlap in the front of the sail. So it really looks like it's moving along and the wind is blowing it through the water. Draw a little splash down here, and a little splash like that, and a splash here and there. Maybe a little wave rippling back in here like this to make it look like it's actually moving through the water. Here's another splash down in here. I want this sail to look even fancier, so I'm going to copy the curve on the left-hand side. I'll draw another line that comes out on a curve nearby, and just keep doing this. But as I'm going over to the right side of the sail, I'm going to make these get a little closer to each other, so it looks like they're going further away. I'm just going to come in here and just carry them across like this, and then back, and this will kind of darken it into the shadow. The sail has a shadow down here like this, but I'm going to make them alternate, like one dark, one light, one dark, one light, and then I'll make another dark over here so they even up. And in the light areas, I'm just going to add a couple little marks like this. So we see that we have stripes. These going to be, again, like the stripes on the bow of the boat here on this tall platform. There's a shadow on the mast here from the sail coming down. And there's a rope that's going to come from right about here, a long line that's going to come down here and back. There's one that comes from way back over here, and it's going to come back to the same general area here, so they can adjust the angle of the sail to the wind. To get up here to the top, which is where that ropes tie in here, they have some lines coming down here to the side, and these are called the shrouds. They hold the sail up. I put one over here like this. The mast covers them. In pirate days, way after this picture was taken, they would have ropes going across like this. But back in this time, sailors just shimmied up the ropes, and then they would slide down. They didn't have foot ropes to climb on, so we'll just leave them like that. Back here is where the king's quarters are. I'm going to draw two lines coming up, and there's actually, it's kind of like a tent. Sometimes it's a structure, but I'm going to draw it looking on, in this case, like it's a tent, and it has maybe a stripe pattern, kind of like we have on the sail here. I'm going to do light and dark, and imagine that tent right there. And he would have his sleeping quarters and his food and all. But basically, this is pretty much an open boat, and it would be a pretty rugged trip, sailing time. Draw a line that comes up here off what's called the transom of the boat there. It's going to come up like this. We'll have another flag here, only this one here is going to be a cluster of smaller pennons, they're called, come out like that. So that makes it look even fancier. There's a pole that sticks out here towards the front, the bow. And this is called the bowsprit. And there's a line that comes all the way down from here. I'm going to bring it down just like that. And this helps hold up the mast. There's one coming out the back end of the boat here, too. This is called the boomkin. It comes way out at the end. So draw a line that comes out from here. It goes behind all this stuff, and it comes out here like this and catches the end. So now you have your boat, it's rigged, and it's ready to go, it's sailing, and it's going through the kind of waters that could, back in those days, have all kinds of things swimming around in them. Some of them might be shaped like fish, like this one here. Some of them might be shaped like spirals, like this one here. Some might be just jagged and spiky, like this one here. I'm not even sure what these guys are going to turn into. But all I know is that the ocean was filled with deep, mysterious things. Things that could sink ships, things that could eat sailors, things that made it a scary journey. And so that's what we're going to do, is turn these guys into sea monsters. Draw this little shape. It looks kind of like a football here. This little spiral here. This guy's coming up and curving a bit. And this guy over here, he looks like he should have eyes kind of like this, just Google eyes like that. And a spiky mouth here like this with sharp teeth on it like that. Down here, I'd like you to draw sea monsters. I'd like you to use your imagination and think of how you can make them look more real. I'm going to draw this guy here, and he's going to have a old big eye. I'm going to have this guy looking over at the other guy there like this, and I'm going to give him a mouth kind of like that, and give him fins like this and spiky lines coming up, and a spiky tail like that. And this one over here, I'm just going to draw with tentacles coming up like this. And they're going to come out like that and around and just go wiggling and maybe even curving and turning like that. Just have some fun making these guys look really strange. And he'll have a big eye right about here. There's a lot of superstition back then, a lot of unknown things, and people would make stuff up. They'd find fossils, and all of a sudden they'd become bones of dragons, and before long you had lots of artwork from these days that has very strange looking mythological creatures in them. So I'm going to draw these little shapes and just make it look a little more rounded. Put some scales on your fish to make them look more interesting, more realistic. And these guys actually look kind of cute in a scary sort of way. And then underneath here, around here, you can add all kinds of other things. Maybe there's lots of little things like this swimming. Just fill this up with mysterious sea creatures and add some different shapes of different kinds. And we're gonna make this look even more mysterious in a minute. I'm gonna add a larger kind of a creature over here like this, and maybe another one over here, kind of coming up and out of the water behind this other guy. Maybe it looks like an old dinosaur called a plesiosaur or plesiosaur in England. And so that'll be there. But what I want to do next is take this background area, and I want to add some action lines like these to show the animals moving in the water. Maybe copy the curves of this looks like what's called a cephalopod. And this little guy over here, I'm not sure what he is, but just add some action lines. And then if you come back in this area and you add darkness to it, fill this in, it makes them look more mysterious. It makes it look like the depths of the ocean and the deep, dark creatures, the mysterious ones that sailors would come to fear. And it just makes it look more ocean-like. So I'm just going to fill these in. I'm using lines that leave a little light here and there just to show the action and the motion of them swimming in the water. And just going to take it right up to the edge there and around in here. I'm just going to pretend that all this area underneath the boat here, right down in here, is under the sea. It looks like there's a lot going on. It looks like there's more going on than there really is with all these extra lines in here. But it does look dark and mysterious and dangerous, and that's what we want to do in this part of our picture here. Now notice this line here that's coming off the beneath the boat. We're going to kind of carry this line through like that. And I'll carry that through over here like this. So this gives us the plane or the area where our boat is taking place. I'm going to even it up a little bit here. And then add some more lines in here and over there. So now you see we've got all this action going on down below. We have a boat that looks very very realistic, and it's sailing along. And we have this background in the distance that we have an opportunity to work with. This little plesiosaur looks kind of like it looks like a Nessie, a sea serpent from the Loch Ness area. But right back in here, I'm going to come up here like this. I'm going to draw some land in the distance. It's going to go behind those tentacles. Now, your drawing is probably not like that. You may have a lot more room here to work with. We're going to take that back there like that, and then I'm going to bring the line here. It's going to come down in the distance behind this character, and I'll carry the water back beyond it here. So it shows the water going beyond and off into the distance. Right here, I'm going to draw a little line coming up and one over and down. We're going to draw a castle, and there's a turret there. There's a turret over here. I'm going to make this one a little shorter so it looks like it's further away. And then we're going to add a wall. Oh, we're going to make a box right here first, and then we'll add a wall. Make that box and put a gate going into the castle. Right now, it just looks like a box and two towers. We're going to join those towers and this box with a line that looks like what we did over here with those little notches. To do it, I'm just going to draw little lines like these that go across. It's so far away you hardly see the details. You can draw some windows. Actually, these are called ports, and they just let light in and a place for the knights or the defenders of the castle to do their job. I'm going to draw a little cone-shaped tops on these turrets, and then put a couple flagpoles up here like this. And remember, the way the wind's blowing is blowing from the left to the right. It'll probably be doing the same thing over here, so you can draw a couple little wiggles for pennants there. Inside this compound here created by the castle walls, you have the keep of the castle, and this is a large area here, a large, sometimes round, sometimes square. And it has a cone-shaped roof on top and another flag coming up here. These are the royal family quarters here. This is where the king and the queen, the prince and princesses would be. And then inside here you also have a church area here, and you have a stable for the horses and the knights and all, and have all kinds of other things going on in the castle. It's so far away you really don't see that much of it. But I'm going to show this wall coming down here a little bit, and there's another platform here, maybe with another tower on it like this, and maybe comes down more like that. Just keep building this up and show how this castle has grown over time with different things, different buildings being added to it, which shows that the community around this castle is prospering. And that means that down here along the shore in the distance, we're going to have another boat like this. I'm just going to draw some little boats just like we did here. Only these guys are so small, they're so far away, they might be sailing along, they might just be standing here with their masts down. And then back in this area here, you can show a road coming down from the castle, kind of winding down here, and maybe back in this area like that. And along this road going up to the castle, you have all these little merchant shops, little buildings along the way. There, people could sell their wares to people, travelers coming up to the castle, and so you'd have tinsmiths and weavers and other things going on there. Over in the distance here, I'd like you to draw this little curve coming down to show the slope of the hill, and then draw other ones going back this way. These are small plots of land that were let out to different farmers to grow crops, and those crops could be sold. A portion of the crops, the cost of the crops or the proceeds would go to the king or the landowners, and so we have a little crisscross there, kind of thinking of that way of living. And then down in here, just draw a whole bunch of roofs and think of a prosperous little town. And a prosperous little town is nothing more than a bunch of little box shapes. Think of each one of these being a house with a family and or maybe another business or something going on. It would be very close to the castle, so if there was a dragon attacking or an enemy, they could go up and find refuge within the walls of the castle there. Back in here, you can draw the forest, just a bunch of little trees like this. I'm just going to draw some scribbly lines, and sometimes I draw them like pine forests, and sometimes just a bunch of scribbles. And this will make the I'm going to put it right up to that scroll to make the bottom of the scroll stand out a little bit. Make it a deep, dark forest. There were things in the forest that were almost as frightening as things in the water back then, so that makes it look a little more real. To make the drawing look even better, I'm going to carry this out, get this line going across there. I'm going to go up a little higher. I'm going to take a line way up here like this, so we can go off further into the distance there. Nice open water. Maybe there's an island over here, far away. Maybe there's another boat out here too. Just draw little shapes, and you make this up as you go. That's what I do with my drawings. I have no plan when I start something like this. I just say, well, that looks good there, that looks good there. Maybe it doesn't look good there, and I just decide the next time I do a drawing, I do it a little differently, and I move things around and keep experimenting and exploring. And in the process, I like to think improving. Back in the distance beyond this boat, I'd like you to draw some big clouds. And I've got a bank of clouds there. Up here I'm going to draw a cloud, and sometimes when I look at clouds I see shapes that look like dragons and other kinds of creatures. So I'm just going to draw these clouds with enough lumps and bumps in them to think maybe that is a dragon cloud flying through the sky. Sometimes they look like they have faces going one way here and other faces going the other way, but you can have some fun with those. Another thing you'll have in here is you have birds like these flying around. You have lots of seagulls. If you make them large like this, it means they're getting closer to the boat. If you draw them really small, they're getting further and further away. And just those few little marks make it look like there's more distance and depth in your drawing, going far away. To make it look a little more interesting, I'm going to add some lines here that come down, and by drawing these curved lines, it's like the wind blowing the clouds through the sky. It also is what makes those clouds stand out more, makes them look more white, more fluffy, more full. I'm going to come in here and do this as well. You can hold off and do this with your colored pencils or your crayons later on, but I like to do this just to get kind of a feel for it. What it does is it helps pull our eye back down into this action scene with the wind blowing the flags. And speaking of which, you can add little lines here in some parts of the flag to make it look like it's light and shadow. And then add some curvy lines underneath the bottom of these clouds to make them look even more real, more full. Maybe to the back sides of the cloud there if the light is coming in this way in our drawing. So you see we pretty well filled this page in with a whole lot of information. One thing I'd like to do is come over here for a moment. Regardless of what you put in here, it could be a drawing of yourself, or it could be, like I said, a story. Maybe you could put the title of the picture for this. I'm going to leave that up to you. But one thing we do need to have is right down here at the bottom, I'd like you to sign it. This is where I'm going to sign my name. I'll put Tom Woodruff here. I'd like you to sign your name on the bottom of your scroll, and then think about what you can do to make that empty space look as interesting as this big full space we just created. I want to thank you very much for drawing with me again, and look forward to having you come back and we'll draw something different.